Out of the 45 men who served as United States President, 9 ascended to the office without election. In all of these cases, it was the Vice President taking office after the death or resignation of the sitting president. 4 of the 9 men were popular enough to later win an election of their own: Theodore Roosevelt, Calvin Coolidge, Harry S. Truman, and Lyndon B. Johnson. The remaining 5 would never win an election. John Tyler, Millard Fillmore, Andrew Johnson, and Chester A. Arthur couldn't even secure a nomination for re-election. While these 4 candidates were never elected as president, they had all previously been on the ballot as vice president. Out of the 9 vice presidents who took office, Gerald Ford was the only one to never be elected as president or vice president. Ford had been vice president to Richard Nixon, but he wasn't when Nixon was elected. When Nixon won the election of 1968, his running mate was Spiro Agnew. In a massive landslide, Nixon and Agnew won again in 1972, but just 2 years later, neither would have their office. Nixon resigned in 1974, the second year of his second term after the Watergate scandal. However, he wasn't succeeded by Spiro Agnew, as the year prior, Agnew had resigned from his own office. Agnew resigned in October of 1973. He was investigated on charges of bribery, tax fraud, and extortion. It was a controversy completely unrelated to Watergate, but which led to his resignation. He was the second vice president to ever resign. Therefore, on December 6, 1973, Nixon picked House Minority Leader Gerald Ford as his new vice president. And only 10 months after becoming vice president, Ford assumed the office following Nixon's resignation. Ford served as president from August 9, 1974 to January 20, 1977, serving out the remaining years of Nixon's term until the next election. Unlike Tyler, Fillmore, Johnson, and Arthur, Ford would be nominated to run in the next election, though he was given a run for his money by former California Governor Ronald Reagan. However, Ford narrowly lost the general election to Democrat Jimmy Carter. Ford was bitter over the defeat, but later, long after both of their presidencies, Carter and Ford would not only make amends, but form a close friendship. Gerald Ford is unique among United States presidents in that he never expected or desired the office. His goal was rather to become Speaker of the House, and even achieving this wasn't likely for him, as after 25 years in Congress, he'd planned to retire. In fact, shortly before being picked as vice president, he told his wife that he was going to run for one more term and then retire to a quiet family life. Perhaps having Ford as president was a relief for many Americans, as he greatly contrasted with his 2 predecessors. Lyndon B. Johnson and Richard Nixon had desired the office of president long before ever getting it. Despite this distinction, Ford is generally overlooked in history, likely due to the more sensational and iconic presidents of the era. To support regular uploads from this channel, consider subscribing and donating to Resyndicated on Patreon. Donations from $2 to $15 a month help towards more frequent uploads. Patreon link in the description below.